I'm Jacqueline Gelineau, and I'm joined here today with Tracy Gray, who's the MP candidate for the Kelowna riding, and she's running for re-election with the Conservative Party. Now, Tracy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you've been representing this riding for a while. You've been busy door knocking. What have you noticed as some of the key issues facing your constituents?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I've been out door knocking every day, and I don't door knock just during elections. I actually door knock year round. And it's a great way for me to gain feedback from people, and it's really amazing how people will be honest when they're in their pajamas at their doorstep. And so I really value that feedback. And also just to let you know as well, I also do a lot of outreach within the community. I go to a lot of events, I send mailers to people's houses, and they fill out surveys, and I get thousands of people filling out those surveys. It's really, really good information for me. And so what I hear consistently is it kind of falls into three categories, I could say. And the first one is on affordability. And it doesn't matter whether someone is a young adult, you know, wanting to maybe move out on their own and own their own home one day, or a senior that's maybe on a fixed income. The second thing that I hear a lot about is crime. You know, in our neighborhoods, both with small business owners and residential. And the third that I hear a lot about is mental health and addiction. And we see that on the streets in our community. Now, the fourth added on now is the unjustified trade dispute with the United States. And a lot of uncertainty that I'm hearing about that, especially from small business owners, where they're not sure, you know, maybe if their costs will be affected, or maybe if there'll be supply chain issues. So that's something that I'm hearing about as well now.
Yeah, a really key industry in Kelowna that's been impacted is agriculture. With the tariffs, you know, they've told us they're being hit on both sides of the border with things they import and then the products that they export. What would you do if re-elected to advocate for, you know, members of that industry?
Yeah, so farmers are very, very important to our region, and they've been hit. They've been hit over the years for many different reasons. So one thing that I will mention as an example is we do have a lot of farmers that supply our wine industry, ciders, cideries, distilleries, and there's a tax that has increased every year on April 1st. It's the escalator excise tax, which means it's an automatic tax increase. And so that was one of the first things that I actually started advocating for when I first got to Ottawa, was to stop the automatic tax increases every year. And one of the conservative platform announcements during this election was to, again, stop the increases, but also to actually move the taxes back to the 2017 numbers. Another thing that I'm hearing a lot right now about from farmers is they're not getting their temporary foreign workers. And so, you know, pruning can't wait. You know, if you need your workers, you need your workers, and there's a lot of delays right now at immigration. And so our community office has been trying to help people as much as possible. There's massive delays in processing of the various immigration files, including temporary foreign workers, and our farmers desperately need those workers. So that's something that we need to change. Unfortunately, the whole immigration system has really been broken by the current government, by the Liberals, and this is just one factor that we're seeing play out here in our community.
What I've heard in speaking with farmers as well is another factor that's impacted them is climate change. You know, we had the heat dome, we had flooding that's impacted some folks, and we had the wildfires. It's also no secret, though, that resource extraction boosts an area's, you know, economic prosperity. Here we have, you know, people that work in the mining industry, we have forestry. What would you do to balance the needs of, you know, all communities while maintaining a strong economy?
That's a great question. So first of all, on the farmers' side, when they have damage to crops and things like that, is what I hear consistently is that a lot of the insurance programs, the federal insurance programs, don't necessarily work for a lot of the smaller farming operations. They might work for the larger operations maybe on the prairies, but when you have a farmer here in the Okanagan that might have multiple properties, it really doesn't, the formulas really don't work well for them. So there's that part. The second part, absolutely, for developing our natural resources and our energy sector. This is one of the ways that we are going to build economic prosperity in Canada. We have lost $500 billion of investment mostly to the United States. We've lost hundreds of thousands of good paying jobs that support families. And so we need to develop our resources in a responsible and ethical way. And we could very easily argue that we have some of the strongest human rights standards and environmental standards in the world. And in order for us to get our energy to the world, we need to be developing our resources. I'll just give you one example. Japan came to Canada wanting our LNG, our liquefied natural gas. And the current government, the Liberal government, turned them away and said, well, there's no business case for that. Well, Japan just signed on a deal with the United States about a month ago. So that is lost economic activity here and lost jobs. There were other countries that also came to Canada looking for our LNG as well, which was Germany and others. And so we're turning away these opportunities, and this is what we need to do in order to build up our economy and to strengthen our economy. I'll just give you one other statistic. GDP per capita is one of the most important statistics that you can look at as a country. And over the last 10 years, out of the OECD, which is 38 developed countries, Canada has now slid down to second from the bottom. Mm-hmm. And GDP per capita relates to productivity of a country and also relates to quality of life. Mm-hmm. So Canada has slid down to second from the bottom. And so this is where you see now where people are having a tough time affording even basic necessities like food. We just saw food inflation just increased again. It was just on the news a couple days ago. Food inflation always seems to be higher than inflation itself. And so even the Central Okanagan Food Bank here, I attended a fundraiser just a couple weeks ago for them, and they were saying that in the last 5 years, the food bank usage here has gone up over 340%. Mm-hmm. So people are having a tough time, and we need to do things so that we can spur our economy and lower taxes for people.
You know, on the same vein of affordability, housing affordability, huge issue here in the Okanagan, specifically in Kelowna. What would you do, if re-elected, to really advocate for this community and to ensure all constituents have access to affordable housing?
That's a great question. It is one of the top things that I hear about. I have just, up until the election was called, I was sitting on the Housing Committee for the last 2 years. I was vice chair of the Housing Committee, and we heard testimony after testimony of how the current government's policies are actually holding back home building in Canada. We've heard the high tax regimes that we have here, and the red tape and the bureaucracy are actually holding back home building. We know right now in British Columbia that 30% of the price of a new home is taxes and government fees. And so we've said a few things. First of all, we want to build homes, not bureaucracy. So even the current, one of the announcements from the Liberals was to build another bureaucracy on home building. So there's so much bureaucracy, they actually need to build another bureaucracy. We want money to go back right into the pockets of homeowners. So a couple of things that we announced was to first of all eliminate GST for new homes for first-time home buyers. And then also a recent announcement was to encourage municipalities to lower their development charges, their own taxes, and that we would match that. So as an example, for a first-time home owner, this could relate up to $100,000 less in the purchase of your first home. Mm-hmm. So this is a substantive difference that could really help, especially first-time home buyers.
Now, another issue that we hear a lot as journalists is people are having difficulty accessing the content that we produce. We specifically, Capital News, we're the newspaper. A lot of people access us physically. But many people don't had difficulty, particularly during the 2023 wildfires, accessing our news because it wasn't on Facebook. What would you do to ensure people have access to local journalism, and then also to ensure your constituents are well informed?
I'm really glad that you asked this question. So the reason for that was because of the Liberal legislation Bill C-18. And we were speaking about this. There was expert testimony on this. I debated this legislation. And what we were saying is exactly what's happened, is that Canadians would have less opportunity to view media online, on digital platforms, and in particular, independent and local media. And so this is a direct result of Liberal legislation. And so we've seen it play out exactly how we thought it would. At the time, there was the Parliamentary Budget Officer, which is a nonpartisan parliamentary budget officer from the government, did an analysis, and they said that the way the legislation was written was that it would benefit the most the 3 largest media organizations, and that was the CBC, Rogers, and Bell, and that's exactly what's happened. And so right now Canadians have less choice. They can't view online media reports. And so we absolutely need to amend this. One of the people that spoke out really strongly at the time was Michael Geist. He's very well known. He wrote a lot of articles about this legislation, and he also testified on it in Ottawa, saying that the biggest losers would actually be local media and independent media, and that Canadians would have less access to viewing media online. And so this is a direct result of Liberal laws.
Just circling back a little bit, one of the issues that we saw was, the wildfires happening. What would you do, and what would you advocate for, to mitigate the impacts of climate change here on this region?
Well, there's a couple of things. You've got adaptation and you've got mitigation, and so there's things that we need to be doing in order to ensure that communities can properly plan for the different situations that we might see come to us. And you're absolutely right. We've had some extreme weather events here. We've talked about doing different things to fund different firefighting options. We know that the Liberal government had made promises on forest firefighters that haven't been fulfilled, and so those are promises that we need to look at. We also need to look at how we're going to fight the various forest fires, because there's a lot of different jurisdictions. You've got municipal, you've got provincial, and then you've got federal involvement, and so we all need to work together on important issues like that.
And now, you're experienced in this. You're the current MP with the Conservative Party, but the Conservatives don't currently hold power. What would you do if the same thing happens again, and you're elected, but your party isn't in power, to make sure you're bringing Kelowna's voice to the House of Commons?
I appreciate that. So it's been an honor to serve the last almost 6 years, and as a member of Parliament, the primary job is to hear the concerns of the citizens and bring it to Ottawa, and bring those issues into debates, into statements, into question period, and into committees, and also into policies as well. So I would continue to do that. I've been really effective bringing issues forth in Ottawa and really advocating for the community here, including bringing actual voices to Ottawa. So that's actually been a real priority of mine at various committees, not only to have sort of the Ottawa group that always seems to have their voices on different issues. There have been many people locally that have been able to bring their voices to the different issues and different studies that we're doing in Ottawa, as well to be involved in policy development and to really push back on government legislation that might need to be changed, to make recommendations on government legislation, and not only to hold the government to account, but also to make recommendations. And that's something that I have done consistently on many different topics and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Now, just to end on a note that's very local here, can you talk about maybe your favorite spot within your riding, a place that you go to relax when you're not in politician mode, or a spot that brings you solace right in your community?
What a great question. I mean, there's so many wonderful locations, and it's the people here that really really are what our community is all about. We're very generous. I call it the spirit of Kelowna Lake Country. But if I was to pick one place, and I've talked about this quite often, is the farmers market, the Kelowna Crafters and Farmers Market. It's my happy place. I would fly home late on a Friday night at midnight. I fly out Sunday morning, and if I can, I really try and go to the farmers market on Saturday mornings. And what I love about it is the entrepreneurial spirit. There's local farmers there, there's local artisans, there's small business owners, and just love the whole atmosphere. And I really try and support local businesses as much as possible. Way even before I became a member of Parliament, it was something that I championed. So I'd say that's a place that I often promote people, to say you have to go to the local farmers and crafters market.
Well, thank you very much for joining me here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.